Helicopters with their version of the Rolling Stones song Gimme Shelter. That would be from their greatest hits compilation, Cream of the Crap Volume 1. And of course, Gimme Shelter, great song, regardless of who sings it, be it Rolling Stones or the Helicopters. I think the Helicopters do a damn good job, in my opinion, of covering that classic. This is Hexes and Soldiers, episode 16. My name is Jason, and I'd like to say a few shout outs real quick to any new subscribers that we have picked up, and we've picked up two or three here, and I can see them sitting in the back. Feel free to move up front. Also, say thanks to those of you who have been listening since episode 1, the very beginning. You guys that have stuck by me through thick and thin. I greatly appreciate that, and hope that you will continue to stay by my side as we continue on with this thing. Um, the barter system we have going, wherein I lend you my voice and you lend me your ear, has worked out fairly well so far, so let's hope it continues to do so. Blues officially number one in the entire NHL Hockey League, and I think I'll hold my head up a little higher, stand a little taller because of that, being the hockey fan that I am, and well, depending on your perspective, fortunately or unfortunately, a dedicated Blues fan. I'm going to ride this wave as long as possible because it will crest, believe me. I also like to say or offer, by way of apology, last episode I gave a listen, kind of proofread here and there, and noticed my breathing was rather heavy, and well, I can only attribute that to asthma. I do have asthma, and from time to time it acts up, so let's hope this episode it doesn't come through so much. I am breathing quite better this week, thank you. So hopefully that won't be an issue. And in the news, moving right along, number of things. In fact, this episode might be a little fat, so I don't know what, if anything, I can trim off, but we'll see how it goes. In the news, Osprey Publishing, and this would be the guys who have done all those, Jesus, hundreds of books that are dedicated to particular aspects of military history, be it battles or armies or even individual units, anything and everything to do with military history. These guys are the well, this is where it's at. You can't get any better than Osprey Publishing. They've decided to expand the product list with the creation of a dedicated games division. And you might say, well, it was only a matter of time. I think it's brilliant, and sure, there's room for another game company, and if they do it right, that's better for us. So we'll see how that goes. Osprey Games will follow the great success enjoyed by their miniature wargaming lines with new products, and will also expand to include board and card games, allowing them to both strengthen and diversify their position in said thriving niche sectors. And for those of you looking for a job, they're also recruiting for a games developer to edit and project manage those new products. So anybody who has dreamed of doing that or has experience doing that, well, here's your chance. For a full press release, go to ospreypublishing.com. Decision Games is having what they call March Magnus. March Magnus. And I wonder how long it took them to come up with that. Anyway, they are taking 32 of their magazines with the best looking covers and putting them against each other in a head to head style bracket tournament. And they want you to choose the best magazine cover, which will become the art for a limited edition graphic t-shirt this summer. So here is someone else with a t-shirt idea. I'm not going to say I inspired it, but hey. And each head-to-head contest, pick your choice for best magazine cover. Each round will last for a week of voting. The winners will be tallied, and winners will advance to another round of head-to-head competition. In the final round, you will select the best magazine cover to go on their limited edition t-shirt. And each person voting will get one $5 off coupon towards the purchase of this special shirt, designed by their in-house artist, Lise Patterson, who I have never heard of, but that's not to say he or she isn't famous. The fine folks at Decision Games have also just acquired the Hex War website. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Hex War website, but apparently Decision Games now owns it. This site is a subscription service that allows players to play several dozen of the Decision Games SPI Classic games head to head with other gamers. Going forward, they intend to update the site and add more current Decision games such as their Folio and Mini lines. Additionally, individuals experienced in real basic coding interested in helping create games should go to the Decision Games site and click on What's New, which will in turn yield relevant contact information. Victory Point Games, they're doing some stuff. Looks like Victory Point Games is getting updated to version 3.0, and the intention is to refocus their energies on their core business activities, such as developing, manufacturing, and publishing great board and card games. And they say, quote, "It is time for the little game company to take serious stock of our internal systems and methodologies and run a tighter ship, to reassess our product development, publication, and marketing, and to start really managing the business side of things, because failure to manage success and growth can kill a company just as dead as failing from the outset. We are well underway reevaluating and streamlining manufacturing. The office has been reorganized, and a new website is in the mix to make things more efficient. And finally, a fiscal assessment of the company's business practices is currently ongoing." So that's Victory Point Games. And then I checked some other stuff, and they got a number of games. One of them is called Habsburg Eclipse, and it looks pretty interesting. Real brief. In Habsburg Eclipse, from designer Darren Leveloff, you control the leadership of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and peripherally the German Central Staff, who assumes greater and greater control over their ally. The Austro-Hungarians have unique challenges as they try to survive the onslaught of the Russian steamroller and try to conquer the Serbs in the south. The mission will be complicated by the perseverance of those enemies, the difficulties with new fronts in Romania, the Balkans, and the Italian border, and the difficulty of keeping the empire's restive nationalities from revolting against Habsburg rule. In the end, the war was too much for the disparate nationalities of Austria-Hungary to take, and when it became clear that the Central Powers could not win the war, the Austro-Hungarian Empire disintegrated. Can you succeed in keeping the Habsburg monarchy intact? Play Habsburg Eclipse and find out. And then it says Habsburg Eclipse has a sister game, Ottoman Sunset, depicting the struggle of their Central Powers ally, the Ottoman Empire. If in possession of both games, what do you know? A combined game is playable either as a two-player co-op game or as a large two-front solitary game. The rules for the combined game are included with Habsburg Eclipse and modify the rules for each individual game. And then MMP finally, uh, well, they have some news up, and by definition it is news, but I don't know how interesting it is, and it is quite brief. Starts out entitled Making Lemonade, Sunday, March 9th, which would be what, yesterday? And they say, "We are now breaking up the bundle of Storm over Dien Bien Phu and Storm over Normandy and printing the rest of Storm over Dien Bien Phu despite not hitting its pre-order number." So I guess they packaged these together and that didn't go over well. And I'm not sure why it would, because those are two completely different things in my opinion. And they say they are canceling all pre-orders for Storm over Dien Bien Phu and Storm over Normandy, and will be re-offering Storm over Dien Bien Phu pre-orders at a discounted price of $30, which is 33% off the retail price of $45 and $3 less than the original standalone pre-order price of $33. Interested parties will have to pre-order. Now that's an interesting concept, a pre-order Storm over Dien Bien Phu during the next few weeks while they print the box and rules. Storm over Normandy, well, that's going to have to wait. And they're canceling all these pre-orders very reluctantly, they say, but they think it is the best way to proceed due to the breakup of the bundle, the price change, and the high number of expired credit cards. And they are pricing the new pre-order between the original standalone pre-order and half of the bundle pre-order, as thanks to their loyal customers for sticking with the pre-order so long, and to help make up for the hassle of needing to pre-order. And I think M&P has invented a new compound word there with the pre-order. The new Storm over Dien Bien Phu pre-order will continue briefly while they finish printing the rest of the parts, but make no mistake, this game is getting published in the near future. And then, most exciting, in my opinion, is ATO Against the Odds. Go to their site and you'll see what I'm talking about. They have a list of potential games that they'll be publishing, and you, that's right, you, can vote for the one you wish to see published first. And they have a number of options, among them The Heron in Flight, The Approach to Stalingrad, August through September 1942. That currently has 83 votes, and brief description follows. The Heron in Flight explores the German Operation Fischreicher Heron to take Stalingrad off the march during the period of mid-August up until mid-September of 42. Failure to encircle Soviet forces west of Stalingrad ensures that an urban brawl for the city will ensue. Both sides are challenged to meet different objectives. See, the Germans must utilize their Sixth Army to destroy the three Soviet armies in the land bridge between the Don and the Volga before they can fall back into Stalingrad. Historically, this attack was coordinated with operations by the 4th Panzer Army that attacked from the southwest, and which was to form the southern arm of a gigantic pincer. Supporting the attack are aircraft of the 4th Air Fleet, which ruled the air. The Soviet player must not only ensure sufficient forces escape the intended German encirclement, but maintain constant pressure on the overextended Sixth Army, with a series of counterattacks from north of Stalingrad to relieve pressure on the defenders of the city. The Soviets are also tasked to retain bridgeheads on the Don, which will be their key for future operations. Designed by Mark Steele, I believe is how you say his name, the Heron in Flight includes 1.5 maps, 420 counters. Units are at the division brigade level for the Soviets, while German and Axis Allied forces are depicted from battalion to division. Each turn is 2 days. The game system is based on this designer's earlier Winter Gwitter, which I own and love dearly, design, and emphasizes the effect of air power and a command and control system, which makes players plan ahead to conduct operations and carefully weigh where their offensive efforts will be expended. And then the other one they had that looked interesting was Hitler's Stalingrad, The Siege of Breslau, 1945. Actually has 90 votes. And this thing, it says, after being cut off and isolated in mid-February of 45, the German garrison at Breslau, some 50,000 men, defied all odds, holding on to the city until after the war ended. And the task of taking the city fell to the Soviet Sixth Army, composed of some 8 divisions with 80,000 men between them, plus 4 tank regiments and 2 artillery divisions. An entire air army, the second, was also assigned to provide ample destructive power from the sky. Hitler ordered the city held at all costs, believing Soviet forces tied up there were thus not taking part in any assault on Berlin. And the task of the Soviets faced was daunting: urban warfare plus a very determined defender. Terrain too was critical. The Oder River flowing through the city sliced it up into many parts. Taking a major sector of the city could mean nothing more than occupying an quote-unquote island in the end. Although Breslau was unimportant to the outcome of the war, the battle for the city was not without incident or drama. By the war's end, the Germans lost 6,000 KIA. The Soviets lost at least 12,000. And these figures exclude the toll in wounded, estimates of which range from 20 to 40,000. And it says the Soviets also lost up to 170 armored fighting vehicles trying to seize the city. And the defending garrison could only surrender after the war officially ended, and the Gau leader in charge of fleeing the city in an experimental helicopter. Hitler's Stalingrad by designer Perry Moore, who we should all be familiar with. longtime designer. Looks hard at this defiant siege with around 300 counters, 22 by 34 inch map, scaled at about 425 yards per hex. A game turn represents 1 week, and Hitler Stalingrad captures the flavor of planned grand assaults, quickly degenerating into gritty street level fighting, with players alternating conducting operations during the turn. Skillfully positioned reserves and sharp counterattacks can blunt massive thrusts, but at possibly too frightfully high a rate of casualties. Special rules include, and here's where it gets juicy, the Breslau having Germany's remaining stock of armored Goliaths, which were their remote controlled little armored fighting vehicles, and the possible use of a nerve gas. And it says Breslau was a major center of production for deadly nerve agents like tabun and sarin. And I believe the Russians went on and still do to stockpile and have tons of that sarin gas. But anyway, also they have Set Europe Ablaze that you can vote on, and this deals with the resistance during World War II. Sounds extremely interesting. I didn't have enough time to go into detail about that, as well as Monty's D-Day and other stuff too. So do yourself a favor, go hit up Against the Odds site and look through all this stuff because it's just pretty damn fascinating. And then, as this episode finally, after 15 episodes, will be dedicated to the ASL fan, here are some news for ASL fans. 2014 ASL Open in Chicago, going to be held April 11th through the 13th. So, if you haven't done so already, make your hotel reservations. Let your wife know you're going to be gone. Find a babysitter. Ask off work. All the above. And go to this thing. I won't be able to go as I have to work. And I will have to work every weekend and holiday, which is what I've been informed. So, no more life for me, I guess. And in case you didn't know, came across by accident, and this happens from time to time. There's just so much stuff. I wasn't aware of this, and I may have mentioned this in the past, and if I have, please forgive me. But OpportunityFire.com is a great site that this guy has up, and he calls it History, Gaming, and More. And it's kind of I guess you call it a blog type diary thing, and he talks about games that he's played and kind of reviews the games and stuff, but done very well. Yeah, very impressive site. So check that out, OpportunityFire.com. And I think most of us already know this, but you know, for any newbies, don't forget about Game Squad. It's a great source for information and threads and discussion of tons of different games, including ASL. So, as I have said, this episode will be about ASL, so shall it be. And what I have compiled for you is, I wouldn't call it a top 10 list so much as a 10 list. And this, of course, would be a 10 scenarios you should play before you die list. Hopefully, you live long, prosperous lives. And, well, if nothing else, in order to play the ton of scenarios that are out there, and if you played a scenario an hour every day for the rest of your life, maybe you would get through half of them. But these are 10 that you should play before you die, and I'll start with number 10, Escape from Veliky Luki. And there's an entire game dedicated to this topic. I think it's called White Death. Very good game, but this is just a particular ASL scenario that deals with it. And it says Veliky Luki, Russia, 12th of January 1943. During the fatal winter of 1943, the German disaster was not confined to Stalingrad alone. No. All along the line, Russians were cutting off pockets of Germans. At Veliky Luki, the entire 277th Infantry Regiment was in dire straits. Surrounded and with further relief efforts abandoned, it was over for the 277th. The Russians were tightening their vise. Elements of four rifle regiments with massive armor and artillery support had broken the perimeter and were now in the process of slaughtering what remained of the unit. As the headquarters fell, the German commander gave the order for all who could save themselves to do so. As night fell, many isolated groups headed for the German lines, some 10 miles distant. And as you may or may not have gathered, this is a night scenario. low counter density, utilizes boards 2, 3, and 4, roughly 10 turns, 5 special rules, and a great scenario. So that's number 10, Escape from Valikai Aluki. Number 9 deals with Merzenhausen Zoo, and this would be found in ASL Journal issue 2. And regarding Merzenhausen Zoo, it states 22nd of November 1944, after 6 days of fighting, uh, Corps believed it was ready for a quick push to the rear. Although intelligence reports showed some German units withdrawing, Merzenhausen was expected to be the best defended town the division would face west of the Ruhr, because the town was the key to the defenses west of the Ruhr River and protected the north-south communications link. And in preparation for the Ardennes offensive, the Germans had to hold it at all costs. The 246th Volksgrenadier Division had been involved in heavy fighting and was undergoing a relief in place by the 340th Volksgrenadier Division. Task Force 1/66, with an attached battalion from the 30th Infantry Division, soldiers, and British tanks, launched an attack before the relief was completed. Its assault ran headlong into the 246th Volksgrenadier Division and elements of another corps. um, Looking at boards 10 and 43, roughly 8 turns, quite a few counters to deal with, and you've got about 5 special rules. So there is Merzenhausen Zoo, number 9. And, excuse me, number 8, Draconian Measures from the deluxe ASL module Streets of Fire. Kharkov, August 13th, 1943. Kharkov was again becoming the focal point for a major battle for the fourth and last time as the rampaging Red Armies of Vatutin and Konev converged on the city. The site of huge German supply dumps, the first Soviets to reach the city belonged to an armored formation of the 57th Army, which had crushed the 848th Grenadier Regiment of the 282nd Infantry Division on August 10th and rolled into the eastern part of the city, where they took over the tractor plant and other factories. German morale collapsed to the point where imposition of draconian courts martial were considered. However, the troops rallied, and plans to shoot every 10th man of the division were dismissed. The 6th Panzer Division was hurriedly dispatched to counterattack in an effort to throw the Russians out of the city. And this uses the boards B, A, D, and C from the module. 9 turns, and looks like 3 special rules, and a fair amount of counters. You're only dealing with, let's see, 6 German tanks, and I guess 3 Russian tanks. So another very interesting scenario. That brings us to number 7. And number 7 deals with white tigers, which came in the ASL Annual 92. And regarding white tigers, it says, if I can get this right, Ning Thokong, India, 7th of June 1944. In early March, the Japanese 15th Army launched Operation Yugo to capture the highland town of Imphal, a vital British base in Assam. As part of the offensive, Lieutenant General Yanagita's veteran 33rd Infantry Division, known as the White Tigers, attacked north along the Tidem Road. By mid-April, its advance had ground to a halt about 20 miles southwest of Imphal, where for the next few weeks it exchanged blows with the 17th Indian Division over possession of several villages along the road. One of these, Ning Tho Kong, changed hands twice as both sides committed to armor over ground now saturated by the breaking monsoon rains. On June 7th, the Japanese threw the last of their tanks into the battle for the village. This utilizes boards 22 and 37, 10 turns, fair amount of counters with about 4 special rules. That is number 7, which brings us to number 6. And number 6 would be cold crocodiles. And this would take place in Sanjust, Holland, on the 20th of January 1945. To the 8th Hussars fell the task of breaking out towards Montfort on the river Ruhr. In their path lay the village of Sanjust, a straggling settlement parallel to the Krom Beck. An unfordable stream with but one bridge across its San was thought to be held by approximately one company of disorganized second-line German reservists. At first light on the bitterly cold morning, Lieutenant Colonel Goulburn of the Hussars conducted a reconnaissance and decided it would not pose too tough a fight. He ordered I Company of the 1st Rifle Brigade, supported by C Squad and Crocodiles, to clear the village. Artillery support for the two-pronged attack was laid on. Meanwhile, the other armored troops were kept in reserve to break across the stream as soon as the bridge was seized. At 14:30, the attack opened. It was a, quote, bit of a shock, end quote, that the Germans in the town were anything but the riff-raff Goulburn thought he was facing. Takes place on boards 24 and 23, 8 turns. You're looking at 5 special rules, and had a lot of fun playing that. And I know it's popular with a lot of other people as well. You've got 88 LLs versus Crocs and Elite Brits, so some good stuff going on there. And then number 5, you have Hill 621, another favorite, and favorite of mine as well. Hill 621 near Minsk, Russia. And this was originally released in the original Squad Leader game. And of course, all the original Squad Leader scenarios were upgraded to ASL standards, but this was one of them. Near Minsk, Russia, July 1st, 1944. In late June of 44, the Soviets began what eventually would be known as the destruction of Army Group Center. The key to this offensive was the city of Minsk. Should it be captured, numerous German formations would be hopelessly cut off. One of the vital routes for the German retreat was via Stolbatsky Highway, which ran behind a series of low ridges and then crossed the Berezina River south of Minsk. And for any of you Napoleonic fans out there, if you remember the Berezina River, this would play a prominent role in his fighting retreat. But anyway, on July 1st, the much overworked and out-of-strength German 170th Infantry Division, in reality a large battalion, was overwhelmed by elements of Rotmistrov's 5th Guards Army. The survivors took to their heels and attempted to patch together a defense along the last line of ridges overlooking the escape route to Minsk. The Russians, in probing for a weakness in the German line, had managed to overrun the German-held village of Ledernovsky and were boiling towards the ridges. Hurriedly gathered German reinforcements were converging in an attempt to patch up the line and hold Hill 621, key to the defense. So, kind of a King of the Hill theme. Utilizes boards 2, 3, and 4. 10 turns. Looks like quite a few counters, especially when you talk about the Russians, and this becomes a recurring theme as well, quantity versus quality. Quantity, of course, being the Russians, quality being the Germans. Regarding special rules, you're looking at 3 of them. So that's Hill 621, and that is also scenario you must play before you die, number 5. Number 4 would be the Slaughterhouse, and this was included in ASL Journal issue number 2, and regarding the Slaughterhouse, Graudenz, West Prussia, 22nd of February 1945, late war scenario. The bridgehead position at Graudenz was declared a fortress on the 27th of January 45. The fortress defense was manned by the remaining elements of Division Hermann Goering, as well as various other Wehrmacht, Luftwaffe, police, and fortress units. So kind of a hodgepodge of units. The Russians relentlessly pressed the attack, inflicting staggering casualties on the defenders. By February 22nd, very few artillery and anti-tank guns remained functioning within the fortress. There were, however, still a large number of dangerous flak guns. In an attempt to remove these threats, the Russians resumed the attack the following morning, reinforced by armor and supported by fire from nearly an entire artillery division. Utilizes boards 20 and 22, 7 turns, medium counter density, and a little over half a dozen special rules. So that's the Slaughterhouse, number 4, which brings us to number 3, better known as the Commissar's House. And this is another original, well, is it an original to Beyond Valor, if you will, but older scenario. Commissar's House deals with the barricade Stalingrad. November 9th, 1942, the Sixth Army was being bled white amidst the ruins. The rifle strength of whole companies was often reduced to little more than a squad in an attempt to take a single house. The battle lines were now drawn through the hallways of individual buildings rather than by streets or city blocks. The Germans decided to bring in fresh, specialized units for the final assault. 5 battalions of elite pioneers, specially trained in street fighting, and veterans of the bitter street battles of Voronezh, were summoned to take the last stubborn outpost between the machine shops of the barricaded gun factory and the Volga. However, the pioneers of Major Rattenmeyer had never seen a battle the equal of that for the Red House, and this utilizes parts of board 1 and 20, 9 turns. Um, Fair amount of counters. Looks like roughly similar amount of counters on each side. You got about 5 special rules. Um, Another exciting scenario that I've played a number of times, got a lot of mileage out of. Number two, a scenario that is very near and dear to my heart, and this would be perhaps not only mine but other people's very first scenario. This came out in the original Squad Leader game, and of course was re-upped to ASL standards as all the original Squad Leader scenarios were. But the guards counterattack, and very, very fond memories of this thing. Um, Stalingrad, Russia, October 6, 1942. After an extremely successful summer campaign, the Germans came upon the Volga fortress of Stalingrad. Here, the Red Army had dug in and was determined to make a stand. Sensing total victory, the Germans threw more and ever more troops into the fighting, but for the first time in the war, German infantry found the Russians their equal. Rebuffed by stiff resistance, the Germans committed crack assault engineers. Gradually, the Germans cleared one block, then another, only to lose them again to sudden Russian counterattacks. By the 5th of October, the Germans had almost taken the key Dzerzhinsky tractor works. However, the fighting had been so heavy that the line troops occupying the surrounding area were exceptionally weak from the previous week's combat. At that point, the Russians counterattacked with their crack 37th Guards to break the ring the Germans had thrown around the factory and reinforce the desperate defenders. This uses only board number 1, only 5 turns, not too many counters. You get a lot of Russians stuffed in building on F3, and of course, the Germans have a few more leaders than the Russians do. Only 3 special rules. But man, this, so many fond memories of this scenario, and I still come back to it, and I'm still, I don't know, it's still, it never gets stale. The thing is, every time you play it, it's still as fun and fresh as the first time, at least for me. So that was the Guards Counterattack, a classic ASL scenario, number 2. And that leaves number 1, drumroll, Bargman's Corner, Hedgerow Hell. That's all I'll say at this time. I'm going to go into it in depth for the meat of the matter, and start with a history of Ernst Barkman. And what I've done here is managed to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and covering ASL, which I've been meaning to do forever, and Normandy. So combine the two and cover 2 topics that have been severely neglected. But Ernst Barkman was a tank commander and had seen plenty of action in Poland in '39. Went on to deal with some stuff on the Eastern Front, naturally. And he'd see further action at the Battle of the Bulge, and face the Soviets once more before it was all over. But he's perhaps most celebrated for his action in France after initial D-Day landings, in particular what would become known as Barkman's Corner. So regarding this, you're looking at late 43, and Ernst Barkman was promoted to the rank of SS Unterscharführer in early 44. The entire division was transferred to Bordeaux area in southern France for rest and refitting as a panzer division. Following the D-Day, following D-Day, 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich was ordered to move northwards and was committed to battle. So early July of 44, the Das Reich Division is moved to Saint-Lô to halt the advance of the U.S. Army's 9th and 30th Infantry Divisions and the 3rd Armored Division. Then on July 8th, Barkman's company was a spearhead of regiment's attack on the advancing American units, and on this day, Mr. Barkman knocked out his first Allied Sherman tank near Saint-Lô. Then on July 12th, he ends up destroying two more Shermans while disabling a third one. During that engagement, Barkman moves his camouflage Panther to ambush position and awaits more Allied armor, and ends up knocking out three Shermans. After that, his tank was hit by an anti-tank gun, which causes a fire in his tank, and he decides to abandon his burning Panther and, along with his crew, quickly put out the fire. After that engagement, his Panther ends up in the workshop for repairs. And what he did was this workshop, I guess, was close enough by that anytime something happened, he could retire to this workshop and get it repaired, and then just ride right out to battle again. So whereas I guess if this workshop hadn't been around, he'd have been done a long time ago. But it says after a day of rest, in the morning of July 14th, Ernst Barkman is ordered to recover four Panthers that had been cut off behind enemy lines. And he succeeds in his task and additionally adds three more Shermans to his score. And on the same day around noon, he's ordered by the regimental commander SS Obersturmbannführer Teichen to recover wounded German soldiers from their American captors. And once again he succeeds, and in the evening his own Panthers return to him from the workshop. And you're looking at July 26th now. Barkman's Panther suffers from engine problems and is sent to field workshop again. And when the mechanics were working on it, the field workshop comes under attack by Allied fighter bombers, or Yabos as the Germans called them. And Barkman's Panther is hit in the engine compartment. So by the dawn of July 27th, his Panther was repaired, but he's cut off from the rest of the company and is on his way to rejoin it. So on his way back near the village of La Lorraine, Barkman stopped by retreating German infantrymen who report that Americans are closing in. So what he decides to do is send two of his men to verify the report, and they soon return with news of an American column made up of like 15 tanks, Sherman tanks, and other vehicles that's approaching. So does he retreat with the other Germans? No. Barkman moves his tank up the road to the crossroad, where he positions his Panther in the surrounding oak trees awaits the enemy. And when the American column approaches, he opens fire. And he knocks out two leading tanks, and then tanker truck, and two Shermans try to go around the burning wreckage that's blocking the road, and he knocks one of them out, and then the other one, and in response, the Americans retreat. They don't know what they're up against. They think there's like a ton of Germans up the road, but it's really just Barkman and I think maybe an anti-tank gun and a couple squads. But of course, also you're dealing with the bocage along these roads, and it was really easy to hold up columns of approaching armor, Allied armor, because all you had to do was knock out the first tank or two, and then they couldn't go around them because they couldn't go turn right or left over the bocage and go around. This bocage is so thick; it had been built up over years and years and years of farming, and it wasn't just bushes. We're talking about hills of earth and stone and whole trees growing along the roads and along these boundaries of farmers' fields. And it wasn't until the Allies developed hedgerow cutters, I guess you call them. These are just basically uh, iron wedges welded onto the front of the tank that would allow them to plow through these hedgerows. But this hedgerow fighting was some bitter, intense fighting, and really held up the Allies for quite some time. The Germans were able to hold on defensively quite well throughout this terrain. But so the Americans retreat, and well, I guess they did it because they can, but call up some tactical fighters and support. So Barkman's Panther's damaged, and some of the crew members are wounded. And using an element of surprise, you got two Shermans that think they're going to knock out this wounded Panther, but instead they get knocked out. And Barkman and his crew repair their Panther once again and knock out yet another Sherman as they leave. So his driver managed to move their damaged Panther to the safety of a nearby village of Nilfberg. And during that brave engagement, often called Barkman's Corner, Ernst Barkman destroyed approximately 9 Sherman tanks and numerous other various vehicles. So quite a feat of heroics. Looks like on July 28th, he reaches Countenance and joins the rest of his company during that 2-day period. He destroyed 15 Shermans and other vehicles, and on July 30th, the Americans surrounded Granville, but Barkman, towing one more damaged Panther, was able to break out. And in order to destroy their disabled Panther, their crew decided to set it on fire. And soon, by mistake, both Panthers caught fire. So both crews were forced to make their way to the German lines 7 kilometers away on foot. And Barkman reached Avranches on August 5th, where and was warmly welcomed by his comrades who heard about his exploits. For his bravery and skills, Mr. Barkman was recommended for Knight's Cross and was accepted on August 27th, which would be my birthday, and was awarded on September 5th. So, Mr. Barkman knocking out all kinds of tanks and doing his part to defend the fatherland. Now, as I mentioned, this is accurately, in my opinion, represented in games. You could play a scenario of this in Flames of War, which I have done, and it plays out quite nicely. But more specifically and more relevant to our purposes would be the Hedgerow Hell ASL version. And what you're looking at with this ASL scenario, and I'm slightly distracted because it looks like the Weed Eater guy is outside, so I may have to stop if he starts up because it is loud and it'll pick up. But anyway, regarding this scenario, it's broken down as such. Regarding the Germans who set up first, you've got 4 squads of 658s, looks like SS, a crew of 228, an 8 neg 1 leader, a heavy machine gun, a light machine gun, and a armor leader 9 neg 2, your Panther 75 LL, and a 50L anti-tank gun. And then as far as the Yanks go, you've got 12 squads of 666 and crew 227, an 8 negative 1 liter, an 8 0 liter, a 7 0 liter, a dismantled medium machine gun, a dismantled mortar, a bazooka, anti-tank gun, a jeep, looks like a half track, and then 5 Shermans with a 75 gun, and then 1 Sherman with a 76L gun. Special rules are as such. Environmental conditions are moist with no wind at start. All hedges are bocage. The sunken roads are sunken lanes. All German units may utilize HIP, which is hidden initial placement for those of you unfamiliar with ASL. Any and all German squads may deploy for setup. The German may not bore sight any weaponry. And then the American player can receive air support, which takes the form of 2 fighter bombers with bombs with a die roll at least 2 less than the current turn number. He must continue to roll for it until air support arrives or the scenario ends. American vehicles and infantry must enter in convoy and column, respectively. Each must move along the road that runs from EH5 to HH5 until disbanded or able to use non-convoy movement. The elements of each convoy/column in each hex can be moved simultaneously using armored assault. And infantry units moving thusly receive both the hazardous movement die roll modifier and the armored fighting vehicles terrain effects modifier. The column may not voluntarily initiate disbandment. And then finally, the half tracks carrying supplies may not carry any passenger or support weapon or tow a gun. However, the exit victory point value of each half track is twice its normal value. And regarding victory conditions, you have the U.S. player wins immediately when he exits greater than or equal to 40 victory points off the west edge of the playing area. If U.S. air support appears, the required victory point total is increased by an amount dependent on the game turn of its arrival, as per the following table. And then it lists victory point increase amounts that correlate to each game turn. What you got here is your, as I said or may not have said, uh, three boards H, F, and E. You've got the Americans entering on board E, and Germans who should already be set up and do so on either boards F or H. Now, for historical purposes, I would assume you would want to set up on the crossroads on board F, because that is where some oak trees appear to be. And then as the column comes around the corner, specifically on hex I2 and I guess I3, they can start being picked off. Um, then again, yeah, you can also set up on board H in another crossroads in hex H2 and do pretty much the same thing, but personally I would prefer to set up on the crossroads on H4 next to the oak trees. But so yeah, and then regarding the squads look relatively similar in strength, and of course the Americans have a bonus in leaders. They have more, and obviously more tanks, but that won't do them any good if they can't. If the front tanks get knocked out, because they won't be able to maneuver around them. But regarding the tank that Ernst Barkman used, we're looking at the Panzer Kampfwagen VG. And if you look in the ASL Armory, it talks about this tank and says, it starts off with most of the Panther D's flaws were eventually rectified, although the later model's engines remained capricious. And in the Ausf G and earlier A, which the game piece also represents, the Panzer Force had one of the best tanks of World War II, and if you talk to my brother, he would say it is the best tank of World War II. Then you can get into semantics and definitions. Is a tank the same as an assault gun? Because if you say they're the same, then well, you got to say the Stug is the better because it had more kills than the Panther. But then you can argue that well, more Stugs were produced than the Panther, and it just goes on and on. But goes on to say the Panzer Force had one of the best tanks of World War II. Its combination of firepower, mobility, and armor made it an extremely formidable opponent. The U.S. Army judged that it generally took 5 Shermans to destroy a Panther. And although over 5,000 were built, and that is 2,000 A's and a little over 3,000 G's, and the 1944 Panzer Regiment establishment called for 1 battalion each of Panthers and Panzer Kampfwagen 4s, with the Panthers generally equipping the 1st Battalion. There were, fortunately for the Allies, never enough to go around. Like the Panzer Kampfwagen 4, the Panther, and the other than favored Panzer divisions, was used in 4 vehicle platoons rather than 5 called for in the official establishment. So then I guess you could compare and contrast the main characters of the scenario, and the main characters being, of course, Ernst Barkman and his Panther, and the Allies' tanks. The Allies have a 76L, Sherman with a 76L, but only one of them. And then they have 5 Shermans with just a regular 75 millimeter gun. And the Shermans have benefit of fast turret traverse. The Panther has a slow turret traverse, so that could become an issue. But Panther really does have the better armament. Also, you've got your armor leader bonus in Ernst Barkman being represented, rightly so. And this it improves the gun performance, and the crew automatically assumes the same morale as your armor leader, so that's good stuff. And then looks like front armor on the Panther is going to be better than the front armor on the Sherman, and the same for the side armor. Um, Shermans have Shermans have an inferior turret, front turret, and as well as the Panther. but the Shermans have a superior side and rear turret. The Shermans also have gyro stabilizers and roughly the same rate of fire, both Panther and Shermans. Um, but the 75s also have a gun duel and multiple hit advantages. So, some interesting trade offs. The Panther, in my opinion, is still the better tank, but it's outnumbered. So, it just depends on how effective the Allies are in maneuvering. If you're supposed to start on column on the road, then that presents a challenge in and of itself, but not necessarily insurmountable. So when you also consider that the Germans can set up using hit initial placement, it really does. The Germans do really, at least initially, start out with a decisive advantage. And if the German player can utilize these things to the best of his ability, 9 times out of 10, he's going to hold up the Allies and prevent them from doing what they need to do and win the scenario. And you have to remember, the victory conditions, at least for the Germans, don't state you need to knock everything out and kill everything. You just have to hold them up long enough for 7 turns to keep them from exiting a certain amount of points off the west edge of the map. And when you think about it, it doesn't seem like such an impossible task. Unless, of course, your one and only tank does happen to get knocked out, then you are up the proverbial S creek, as it were. So that's the name of the game, and like I said, it's challenging for both sides. I think if you ever play this or have played this, as soon as you get done, you need to switch sides and play as the Allies if you were the Germans, and play as the Germans if you were the Allies, because there are equally challenging tasks for either side, and it interesting as well, both sides. So, and then of course, you have your historical aftermath, which all these, for those of you unfamiliar with ASL, all these scenarios will list your introductory history paragraph, and then have a conclusion regarding that history. And it says, Bargman's Panther lay between the high hedges lining either side of the crossroads. No sooner had he taken up this position than the American armor came into view some 200 meters distant. His first shot flamed the lead tank, and the others were thrown into confusion. Bargman's loader slammed shell after shell into the breach as jeeps and half-tracks tore apart under the fire of the 75mm cannon. Suddenly, to the left, 2 Shermans were spotted. Coolly switching targets and range, Bargman opened fire. It took a couple shots to brew up the first. Although the second managed to get 2 hits on the Panther, it too fell victim. But it all had to end. The 4 fighter bombers were now cratering the ground all around the tank, and the German infantry were all dead or had fled. 2 more Shermans crept close and opened fire, their shells scraping the paint off the tank. Bargman's Panther, with track damage, one of the hull seams split open, ammunition exhausted, and the driver and gun layer wounded, managed to reverse up the hill to Lenofberg, where the jammed hatches were prized open with crowbars and the tank abandoned. German infantry on the spot counted 9 kills for Bargman, and as we know, and as I stated, he was awarded the Ritterkreuz for this exploit. So, again, a fun scenario to play, and I've played it a number of times, and it's about half and half. Neither side has managed to dominate as far as winning, and it's also cool because you realize that you are playing a historical event, and it's hard to pin down when you're talking about a tactical scale an exact historical um, event. A lot of it succumbs to conjecture and even uh, imagination regarding these things, but there are a number of things that can be faithfully reproduced regarding that history, and this is one of them. So that just adds to it as far as flavor and makes it more interesting. So Bargman's Corner, number of options, and I didn't go into the Flames of War one, but if you like minis, easily reproduced and played via Flames of War. And then, of course, ASL scenario, Bartman's Corner, plays out quite nicely. So if you haven't played it and you're a fan of ASL, get a hold of this thing. And the whole module for this Hedro Hell, you can't go wrong. There's a number of scenarios in there, and Bartman's Corner obviously is probably the cream of the crop, but all of them are fun to play and definitely worth your investment. So I think that's it for this episode. I'm going to start wrapping things up here. um, and it's probably a good stopping point anyway, because it sounds like the neighbors have loosed man-child, and this is a baby the neighbors have about 2 doors down. And it's the most odd-looking baby I think I've ever seen. It looks like a grown man, but in the body of a baby. I don't know if that makes any sense. I call him man-child. So I hear man-child, and it's a good thing, like I said, that this we're probably wrapping this up because you will definitely be able to hear man-child. And as far as that goes, it seems like the weed eater person has weed eated himself as he's yelling about something. So probably a good stopping point. But real quick, I had hoped, probably unrealistically, that Army Group Narva would have shown up. It hasn't. I'm really itching for this thing. And it's a conundrum because I have so many games, so many that I've yet to play, so many that I've only played once, and so many that I love them to death and I've played them a number of times. Want to play them again, and here I am fixating on this game that I don't have. It seems to be a recurring theme, but yeah, this thing's going to be good, and hope to get it soon so I can do a full history on it and go into it in depth in a future show. But as far as future shows, I know I've neglected all things Pacific theater. I've completely neglected the Civil War. I've completely neglected World War One. So I still have a lot of territory to cover, and that's just the biggies. I mean, there are tons of other things as well. Um, so we'll see how that goes. Also, with this post office job, I've heard different things. I've only been doing it for a couple weeks, and the type of stuff that I'm doing is brand new. It's still up in the air as far as how they're going to handle it. It looks like my weekends and the holidays are done for, as the post office will own me during this time. And then, of course, any free time that I once had is now effectively eradicated. So, as far as gaming time and even time to prepare and record these shows, it will become more and more valuable. And as I've said before, we'll have to see how it goes. And if this becomes a bi weekly thing or even a monthly thing, then that's what will have to happen. But until that time, I'll keep trucking. And as far as you guys go, I'll just say thanks for listening and keep gaming.